Today I want to redo an old video, and that particular old video is the one where I showed you how to crochet in the round or make a tube in crocheting. And the problem with the video was that I didn't really show a lot of the very beginner stuff, so I skipped a lot of things that would be important to you if you'd never actually tried to crochet in the round, so that's a bit of an issue. So I want to redo that video, and I really want to explain to you the difference between ending a row every time you have gone around and then doing the spiral method. And I also want to be very clear about which stitch it is you need to work in and which stitch you're not to work in, because there is a difference, and I think that is unfair to not show. So let me go and show you that again. To begin with, we need to make a slip knot, and we do that. There are many ways of doing that. I do it this way. I lay my yarn here and then I wrap it around my index finger, and then I wrap it around again, or I lay it in the back. Then I take the loop off, and then I take the yarn that I just laid in back and pull it through the loop that I had on my finger. Then we need to chain. So chain however many you need on your round. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. To join in the round, what we do is we go into the first stitch. You will notice that there is also a knot here. Don't go into the knot, just go into the stitch. And this is hard to see, but I'm just yarning over. So I'm basically just getting the yarn, and then I'm pulling it through the first loop, and then through the second. And that is called a slip stitch, because we just slip it through. So let me just show you again. I have my 10 stitches, and I work in the first one. So you can see it as sort of it is a chain, right? And they're sort of interlocked here, and every stitch is every V that we have. So just go in there, grab the yarn, and then pull it through both of those loops. Now, to move on, there are 2 different ways of working in the round. The first one requires you, or you always have to when you're at this stage, because now we have one flat round. So you'll have to chain 1. But I will just show you first the one where we make this round, and then the round on top of that is going to also be completed. Sorry. And then the next round is going to be completed, and so on. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to spiral. Now, to start, we're actually in this chain. You can see this is a little bit bigger. This is the one we joined in. Oh, and I have I'll fix that. This one, which I joined in, I am just going to work in. So now that basically has 2 stitches in it. But when we get up here, we can only see 1. This is our chain, and this is the first stitch. I'll just, to begin with, this is a little easier if we do it this way. So I am just catching this first stitch with a stitch marker. So I know now that this stitch is the one where I chained 1 after I had, you can see here, after I had joined. And now I am going to move on, and I am going to do 1 single crochet in each stitch. You can do this with double or triple or whichever stitch you want. Basically everything that can be worked flat, okay, almost everything that can be worked flat can be worked in the round too, just by joining the stitches in the beginning. Oops. And now I have this stitch which I didn't get chained correctly, and if this was a real piece I would go back and fix it, but This is just a demonstration. So now I'm at the last stitch. You can see this is curling up already, which is what we want. I know to not work in this stitch because this is the slip stitch that I used to join. What I want is to make another slip stitch in the next stitch here. And then you will learn as you go along how that slip stitch, I'm sorry if that was really loud by the way. You will learn when you move on how this stitch looks as opposed to the other stitches. But when you're just a beginner, maybe it will be nice for you to have some sort of way of knowing that this is the stitch which you're not to work in. To move on, now you see we have a flat round now too, because we joined with a slip stitch. So to move on again, we're going to slip one. Sorry, we're going to chain one. And then we'll go into the stitch which we just came out of, the same stitch as we did the slip stitch in. And then we're just going to go around, doing one stitch in each stitch. And it's very useful to be able to work in the round. I can't actually remember if I said this in the other video that I did, but most body parts can be approximated with cylinders, so it's very useful when you're doing garments and stuff. Now again, this is my slip stitch, so I'm not going to work in that, but I am going to work in the stitch which my slip stitch is attached to. So I'm going to let that go out and slip that together. And now you can see, if I turn the right side out here, that I now have this. So it's starting to become a cylinder. Now the other way of doing this would be to just, instead of joining with a slip stitch, I would go in and I would just do another single crochet. And then I would continue on single crocheting. Or whichever stitch you're doing, you can spiral in any stitch that you want. Oops. So now you can see I am back at the beginning, but I can't actually... Oh, I'm just going to move this out of the way. I'm back at the beginning now, but you can't actually see the beginning. You can see that this is not as tall as the rest, but you can't actually see the beginning of my round. And that's because I've been spiraling. Now, the spiral is great for some things, and the closed method is better for other things. So the closed method, if you can imagine that you sort of end every row, right? With the closed method, you're actually able to work stripes, and they will lay nice and flat on top of each other. With the spiral method, you won't get the seam. You can see here that I have a seam where I joined. This is the slip stitch you can see here, and that is the other slip stitch. So, and then when I moved on here, you can see that it just became much nicer after I started spiraling. So when you slip stitch after every row, you will have rows that are complete, and therefore you can do stuff like stripes. But if you're just working in one color, then the spiral is probably better. So now, and also if I want to end it now, my spiral, the end of my spiral is actually a little higher up than the rest. And I could fix that by just doing, that's my normal sort of fix for this, I would just do a... Oh, my hair is everywhere. I am sorry, this is a bit gross. When I want to end it, I can just go into the next stitch and do a slip stitch, and it's not as high. So it'll just look a little flatter, and you'll just weave in this end, and the first end, of course. Yeah. Next thing I want to show you is if you have crocheted a flat piece, how to join that in the round, and then do the same thing, work around it. Okay, so if you have crocheted a piece like this, you can always join it in the round just by folding it in half, like this. So you'd be looking here, right? I don't know why I had turned it upside down. You would be looking here to go back to this, back through this row, and then you'll just fold it. And then you'll go into the very first stitch here, and you will slip and slip. So just like we did with the base chain before. Now you would chain one, and then you can choose which way you want to go. And you go back into the same stitch that you just came out of. Sorry, my dog is being very indecisive about where he wants to go. So you will just continue working in the round just like you did before. And again, you can choose to work in a spiral or in rows. Kipo! He doesn't really handle that the family is split very well, so when one of us goes out, he whines and whines and whines. So I'm sorry, I'm sorry about that. Now here you can see where you joined, and to make a nice join, just go into the next stitch here. And this would be the spiral, right? If you wanted to do the other method, so that is the spiral. If you wanted to do the other method, you would just go in here and slip stitch. Then you would chain one, go into the same stitch again. So the stitch that is underneath this stitch where I just chained. So there. And then you would continue on. Did I go into the same stitch again? No, I didn't. It just looked very big. And then you would go in the round. And then again, when you come back to the beginning here, you would see that you have a slip stitch here, which you're not going to work in. You are going to work in this stitch though, and you're just going to slip that. So you're going to have your row of slip stitches on top of each other. So that could be a very nice cuff or something like that. I think that was what I made in the first video where I showed you how to work in the round. So that's it. I hope this was better and clearer and easier to see, and yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you again next Friday.